Welcome to another episode of Genuine Enthusiasm. I'm excited about my next guest. Let me talk and brag about her a little bit. Her name is Julia Juhas. I'm thrilled to have Julia Juhas on the show today. Julia is a professional dancer, performer, yoga instructor, and movement coach who has faced major career challenges from injuries to chronic illness and come out stronger and pain-free. She now helps people reconnect with their bodies, move with ease, and release tension. I will also dive into her work supporting safe and empowered intimacy in film, TV, and theater. This is a conversation about movement, resiliency, and finding freedom in your body. Welcome, Julia.
Hi, Trevor.
That was a lot of bio there, and I didn't want to make mistakes, but I think I made a couple. I apologize, Julia.
No, that was actually really good. The only maybe I wouldn't say it's a mistake, is the how you pronounce my last name, Juhas, which is a hard one. I get it, because I get
And
Juhas, Huhas, all kinds of funny names, so I'm used to it. But just for your viewers and whoever's listening, it is Juhas.
and why don't you reveal what we did 10 minutes, 20 minutes prior to this interview?
What all the tech issues I've had, or
No, I mean rehearse your. I had you provide me your audio of your name, last name, so I wouldn't make this mistake.
I think I literally said Juhas, not Hoo-ha or Juhas.
So I must have played the. Anyways,
No,
so
that's fine. I gave you a lot of options, so it probably your brain was like, oh no, which one was it?
say
So,
your last name again,
Juhas.
Julia Juhas.
Yeah, it's like
Okay.
the U-Haul rental truck, but instead of haul, it's Haas.
Have you ever talked to them about sponsorship opportunities?
No, but I'm thinking about it now.
Okay, so before we go any further, I do want to shout out a mutual friend of ours, Heather Christine. Thank you, Heather Christine, for making this connection with Julia, even though I wrecked her last name. And she's going to call you and message you saying, why did you connect me to this Trevor guy? He doesn't know how to say my last name. But thank you, Heather, for connecting me to Julia. Thank you, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Heather.
All right, you ready to get into this?
Yeah.
All right, so for listeners meeting you for the first time, how do you usually describe your work in your own words?
My work. So my work as an actor, performer, or as a movement coach, all the things combined.
All of it combined, whatever hits your soul when that question came to you.
Okay, great. So the work that I do as a movement coach is it's yoga inspired, but it's a gentle approach to movement. It's very nervous system based, nervous system awareness, and really exploring the unique language of your nervous system and your body, and exploring how your history, your traumatic history, your daily history, because as we go throughout the day, we have stressors, sometimes not always, but how that lives in the body and in the tissues. So I work with people in group settings, in classes, or privately, to help regulate the nervous system and unravel tension in the body and kind of get deeper into learning about, again, your individual system. And then as an actor performer, I sing, dance, act. I do theater, film, and TV. And every project I approach kind of similarly, but also differently depending on what the project is and who I'm working with, and whether it is primarily or heavily dance involved, if they're singing, or more of the acting. So.
You often talk about living with ease. What does ease mean to you right now?
So, ease, what I like to say off the get-go, what it's not, because sometimes it can be misconstrued or misunderstood. I think sometimes when people hear like, oh, live with ease, or be easeful, it could come across like that toxic positivity and, oh, everything's great, live with, ease, that you're just always happy and everything is easy. That's not what it's about. It's how can you develop and practice tools to help you navigate challenging systems so that you can move through them with a little more ease or a little more awareness, and nervous system regulation. All that stuff can just help us maybe feel more grounded and present in a challenging situation, event, circumstance, relationship, whatever, conversation, whatever it may be. So it's really about developing those tools for your system to help you just feel a little less locked up and more, grounded and open and clear.
Let's go back a little bit to the earlier days of your career. In the middle of your professional dance and theater career, you experienced a serious knee injury that required surgery, and later you were diagnosed with a chronic condition affecting your spine. Can you take us back to that time?
So that was probably it was definitely my late 20s, and I was on a contract, and I remember we had, I'm trying to think, we were in one show, so it was a contract where we were performing this one show in multiple theaters. So we were doing it in one theater, and then when it closed in that theater, we would move on to another theater. And so the first time we were doing it, I started to develop what someone might call as sciatica, like really severe leg, low back pain, a pinching. Anytime I rode my bike to work, I could barely do the show. And I kept having to modify things. And then when I went to the doctor, they were like, oh, it's sciatica, just take some Advil, whatever. And then it just kept persisting. It was getting worse and worse and worse until one day, actually, when we moved to the next theater, I remember waking up on opening day that we were opening at this theater, and my knee was locked, and I was like, what's going on? And so I started noticing there's this little thing that was popping out of my knee, and I kept having to squeeze it back to straighten my leg. And sure enough, it happened in the middle of a show, in the middle of opening night. And I remember I was just like limping around. And so I had to again modify my track in the show. I couldn't do any of the dancing. I had to just do all my songs, kind of park and bark. Like I couldn't do all the physical movements with the song, which was very frustrating. Also, it was very hard to see somebody because I was on contract, and it was a contract or a theater company that didn't have swings or understudies. So the pressure of having to be there and not miss a show was very strong. So again, we just modified. And then when I went to go see a specialist, I had a contract coming up, and I had to back out of that contract because I didn't know what was happening, and I had to wait 2 months for an MRI to actually know what was going on in my knee, because the specialist had said, this doesn't sound very good, and I don't recommend you doing another dance contract until we get that MRI. So I get the MRI, and sure enough, I had to get an emergency surgery. I had broken my femur in my knee joint. And so I had to go in 2 weeks after this visit with the specialist, because he had to figure out how he could squeeze me in his schedule. He actually put me in at the end of his workday, which was really kind. And he works specially with athletes. I think he does like the Maple Leafs, so I felt very lucky to be with a surgeon who was heavily in the athletic and sports world. So yeah, they took care of the knee. Once I healed from the knee, that sciatic-y kind of pain came back, and then I went to the doctor, and they referred me to a rheumatologist. That rheumatologist said I had ankylosing spondylitis, which is this autoimmune inflammatory disease of the spine and pelvic area, and prescribed me with tons of drugs. And so I do my research. I didn't pick up the prescription. It's not that I recommend anyone who's diagnosed with this not to take what is recommended. It was my own choice to do the research around it and the certain medications that I was prescribed. And so I went to get another opinion. They gave me the same diagnosis, so I knew that that was something I was living with, and that kind of shifted how I approached my practice as a mover, a yoga person, just life and athletics. So I had to shift how I approached that, and a lot of that was this. A lot of it was a mental game and rewiring how I spoke to myself as a person, as an artist, and really dealing with the perfectionism, which I think a lot of the perfectionists out there can probably relate, that they tend to get all kinds of weird ailments because we need to get things right and perfect and need to be in control. So it was a long journey to undo that sense of control. And so that led me to Esther Myers, where I did my training, yoga training, and to the approach to movement that I take now.
Segues into my next question, which you kind of touched on. What was the hardest part emotionally about facing pain and limitation as someone whose career depended on movement?
Yeah, it was extremely frustrating. I think the hardest part was when I went to see the surgeon and his team after they looked over my MRI for my knee specifically. They were like, yeah, you'll probably, the first person I saw was like, you probably won't dance again. Like, I don't think that's going to be a thing if you don't want to have arthritis by the time you're like 40. That was devastating because dance has been my life and performing and all that stuff. And that was a very hard pill to swallow. But then at the same time, the second opinion was like, no, we can find a way. And so with, dedication, devotion, that allowed me to heal. But that was one of the hardest parts. And I think another challenge emotionally was even just everyday life. I'm a big outdoors person. I love hiking. I love camping. And so even that, experiencing the sciatic pain and that debilitating pain when it would come up was really hard, because I would go for a hike with my partner at the time, and 5 minutes into the hike I would be crying. I'd collapse to the ground. I'm like, I can't go on. It was quite frustrating. And I just was like, is this like that kid on the went viral years ago? Is this real life? David at the dentist, like, is this the rest of my life? So that was a huge hurdle to get over.
Was there a moment when you realized, like a moment that you can remember, when you just realized your relationship with movement needed to change?
I think that moment actually is quite clear for me. I walked into this yoga studio where I actually did my training, Esther Myers Yoga Studio, and I remember going into my first class there, and the way they had practiced yoga was so different than what you see in the mainstream yoga world. And during the class, I kept putting up my hand or asking the teacher, this is not how we do this pose. This is not how we do this. And everyone in the class was laughing. And the teacher was like, they're not laughing because of your question. They're laughing because they understand everyone's kind of been there, and there's this idea of kind of going to your edge and holding a thing and kind of forcing your body into a shape that may not be conducive to your body and its limitations. So it was interesting to kind of work through that and unlearn and undo what I had for years practiced as yoga. And this I started maybe when I was 12, and this was now, I was in my 20s, actually maybe even my 30s, and I had to unlearn all of that. And I trusted this process because it was, when I looked into the certification, I was like, this is the one I want to do, because it was a 3-year training program. You know, it was very in depth. It was recognized by the government, so it was a tuition. So once I started getting into it, I knew, I walked out of that class and I was like, I don't think I felt this free in my body. Like, if I felt like a floating head, everything just felt so easy. And I was like, this is how I want to feel. And I started doing more of that. And honestly, the pain started to dissipate. And becoming vegan, I think, helped too.
That chapter of your life led you toward embodied mindful movement. So what does embodied movement now mean to you?
Embodied movement to me means to really dive into your personal experience when you're moving. So really exploring what feels good for you. And as you explore movement, okay, kind of checking in, what if I tried doing it this way? What if I tried doing this way? Really investigating on a deeper level, rather than I'm going to do this pose or do this. It's like, no, it doesn't have to be so linear, and it doesn't have to be so structured, that there's a little more freedom, breath, presence, a deeper sense of grounding to really integrate the mind and body. We talk about that so often, the mind-body connection. Like, what does that even mean? You know, and I think that embodiment is that it's really linking the two, that they essentially become this one language.
So you created Live with Ease. What is it really about at its core?
Ooh. So many things.
See, I told you I'd be asking you questions with a direction.
Yeah, so at its core, it's really about a lot of things that I spoke to, helping people discover and build a sense of safety in their own nervous systems, and build a sense of trust, especially people who have maybe had traumatic experiences. It doesn't always have to be trauma. Sometimes people just feel immense levels of tension in their bodies and or disconnected from their bodies. And so Live with Ease is an opportunity, whether one decides to do private sessions or a group class, any of the classes that I offer, or the Ease program, which is private sessions, but it goes a little more in depth. So essentially they all lead to the same thing.
You teach about grounding the bones and releasing tension. Can you explain that in a way listeners can feel in their bodies as they listen?
One of my favorite things, grounding through the bones. So in the simplest way, even just sitting here, So when you ask that question, do you want an example or what that actually means to ground the bones?
Maybe both.
Okay, so when we think of grounding the bones, what that does, if I go to the bone density or if I go past the muscular tissue and think of bones connecting to the earth, it's more tangible than saying, oh, relax your muscles. Just relax your shoulders, relax your glutes. You know, that's not always easy to do. If somebody's so tight, they're like, yeah, awesome. How do I relax my tissue? Like, how do I relax the muscles? Don't just tell me to relax because that's not helpful, right? So, what I would suggest or guide is I always start with a body scan when you're resting on your back and really drop in and go, okay, can I feel my body resting on the ground? Or if I'm seated, can I feel my sit bones connecting to the chair? Can I feel my feet connecting to the floor? And then can I, as I breathe, tap into the heaviness and the weight and the density of the bones? Again, when we think of bones, it's solid. It's like thinking of a heavy water bottle with water in it versus a piece of paper or, you know, something that may not have as much weight. It might feel like it because it's tight. But if I think of the density and the heaviness of the bones connecting to the ground, so I want to feel the contact, and then I want to connect my exhalation, my out breath, to the release of the heaviness of the bones to gravity, and let gravity act on the weight of the bones to sink into the earth. And once the bones deeply sink into whatever support you're resting on, that signals to your nervous system, okay, oh my God, we're surrendering, we're letting go, because we're so used to fighting gravity. We're so used to being up here that we're told, like, don't collapse, don't drop, this, all that kind of stuff. But in this practice, it is encouraged to let your bones give over to gravity so that it signals to the nervous system, I don't have to hold on, I can let go, and then the muscles can start to release and soften. And then you start to invite movement, and it opens up a whole world. So many people, after doing even 15 minutes of the practice, and I get them to move their arm through this process of grounding, and they start to move their arm above their head, and they're like, I haven't been able to do that in 20 years. How did you do that? I was like, I didn't do it. You did it. I guided you, but ultimately you're giving your body the permission, and you're rewiring or reframing that neurological pathway of, I can't do this, it hurts, I can't move my arm, I can never do that, don't do that, do that. But once your system feels safe, then it goes, wait a minute, that's a little tricky thing you just did to me. So yeah, that's basically the grounding piece, yeah.
So more than 10 years later, you are pain-free, still dancing professionally, and living an active life in your 40s. How does movement feel now compared to earlier in your career?
Oh, it feels liberating. It feels so free. And I think one of the biggest things about it is when I'm sore, if I do have a flare up, which I had recently, like in September, but before that, I haven't had it in years. And when it comes up, the best thing about it with this sort of mindset and this approach is that I don't go into panic mode. I know exactly what's happening. I know that my system is holding on, is stressed, it's spinning out of control, and I need to go, okay, let's just take a second here. Let's give her some love and attention because she's feeling ignored. And yeah, that's one of the most liberating things now versus when in my 20s. I feel more freedom and ease in my body than I did when I was in my 20s. And yeah, I am devoted to my practice every day so that, I can move like this well into my 90s, hopefully. I may not be able to cake my face, but pretty close.
So, what does sustainable movement look like for you day to day?
So, I always start my mornings with a meditation, just to connect again to, what what's spinning up here, and to check in with my body and how it's responding to that, and then getting it to soften, become more present through breath work. And then I will get on my mat and start my movement practice with that grounding that I just mentioned. I could spend like 15 to 20 minutes just lying on my back on the ground and just going through different body parts and then just changing my limbs, and moving around slowly just to kind of get used to how my body feels today and kind of oil up those joints. Because to me, that's a more efficient warm up than just jumping into like a heavy cardio type of warm up. I still do those things, love it, but the sustainable movement is always starting with connecting to the body through something more gentle, that requires a deep listening to your system and to your body and how it's speaking to you that given day. Because we will wake up different every single day, and we need to honor what that is.
What beliefs about aging and movement do you most want to change?
Oh yeah, Trevor, these are great questions. I love that question. Oh my God, it makes me want to.
I get genuinely enthused.
I can tell. I can tell. So, what about aging in the aging body? Do I want to see the mind shift around that, or I think that this idea of getting old means, or getting older means, we no longer have access to our body and maybe more intense physical movements. It's so not true. We, you know, I come across so many people in my teaching who are in their 80s and 90s who are doing handstands, headstands, moving their spine in all kinds of ways, doing back bends and wheels. And these aren't people who've been doing it forever. They've, at some point, maybe in their 50s or 60s, have decided, you know what, I need to do this if I want to create longevity for healthy movement in my body. And so I think we need to, as individuals getting older, we need to stop making excuses why we can't do stuff. Why are we limiting ourselves? Can we, and I'm not saying, go lift heavy weights or do anything overly aggressive, but in basic functional movement, a lot of times we're like, oh, I can't bend over because that I threw my back once or whatever, that I'm too old, I won't be able to get back up. Some people have said, I've worked with, and I'm kind of like, my brain is going all over the place, but I worked with the visually impaired at one point, and there was a gentleman who would do the practice. It was a yoga class full of visually impaired individuals, and this gentleman would sit in a chair and everyone else was on the ground. So I was teaching this mat class and trying to navigate his needs too in the chair. And I said to him, one day we're gonna get you on the ground. And he was like, no, you won't, because I will not come up. I said, oh yes, you will, because you have the chair. You can have the chair beside you. You can use it to go down, go up, whatever you need. And sure enough, after a few months, he started doing yoga on the ground. And this man was blind, and he started developing that trust. And he was an older gentleman too. He was, I believe, in his 60s, close to 70. And it's so remarkable to see what people are capable of if you give them the space to explore it. And it might take time, but that's the part of this practice. It's not a quick fix. It's not, it's not going to happen overnight. It takes patience, dedication, devotion, going, even if I say, like, you have a personal trainer or a private yoga person or whatever you do once a week, you can't just expect to go once a week and see changes. You need to do all the things in between. If you see a physiotherapist, for example, or if you see me and I say, hey, why don't you every day for 15 minutes lie on the ground and just do this breathing? That's it. Just add that into your day. Try to do it every day if you can. If it's only a few days, that's okay. But then if you come to me the next week and you're like, I didn't do my homework, I'm like, that's okay. It's not on me, it's on you. Like, this is for you. You're doing it for yourself. So you need to decide if you want to, experience those shifts and transformations. So in that, really devoting yourself to that time and space to explore and listen, no matter how old you are, you can shift your perspective and you can shift the way you move. Mm-hmm.
This past fall, while performing at the Shaw Festival, you dealt with an injury to your Achilles tendon. How was this experience different from earlier injuries?
Okay, well, this injury happened very early on in the rehearsal process. It was about 3 days into rehearsal. And I went through a gauntlet of emotions and negative thought patterns. One of the things that, hit me first was, oh my God, is this it? And exactly what I was just saying, about the age thing. Oh my God, this is it. I'm now in my 40s. I can't dance anymore. It's done. Can I even finish this contract? And then, I had to have a conversation with myself, and through lots of meditation, and I started seeing a different therapist than I did a few years before. And I had to remind myself of how I would guide somebody in this situation. And when I did that, it shifted the way I approached my healing. And thankfully, all the people involved, like the stage manager, director, choreographer, everyone was so supportive. And they had said, take the time you need. Don't rush the healing process. We want you in the show. We want to see you do the show without having a setback. So take the time you need. So it took me 3 weeks, maybe a little over 3 weeks, basically the entire rehearsal process. I was sitting on the sidelines. I started by sitting in a chair, and it was a heavy tap show. So we did a lot of tap dancing, a lot of like jump turn type of jazz dancing. That was quite physically active. And so I had to gradually build my strength and my confidence, because I was so terrified of snapping my Achilles, because I've been in 2 shows where I've seen it happen and I heard it happen, and it's terrifying. And it happened to 2 people in 1 show in the same role. I won't speak about that because that's their own personal story, and although it is public knowledge, that's okay. And so the fear of rupturing an Achilles tendon was very high, because that is an even longer healing process, and requires surgery. So I had to listen to my body. And what was really interesting is when I felt something was off, I immediately addressed it. Whereas in the past, I would have pushed through and been a hero and been like, that's okay, I can take it, I can take it, I can take it. And that could lead to something more severe. Whereas what's different now is that I can stop and say, something's not right, I need to address it, I need to give myself time to heal and implement and integrate all the things I know about the body and how it heals, and also the mindset that goes around it. And then once we hit our invited dress rehearsal, I jumped in the show. So that was the first time I think I did the show in its entirety. I started during tech, jumping into little pieces of numbers, of the dance numbers, just to kind of test, if I was in the right spot, and make sure that my other, my God, what's the word? The other people in your cast, my castmates, felt safe, and so I would gradually build in my my numbers, and then I did the entire run, and it felt great, and I felt like I was 20 again, just like dancing up a storm, living my best life. And I was like, what? I can't believe I went through that whole thing. But I maintained my practice every morning before the show to make sure that my ankles, my whole body was prepared for what it was about to get into in that 2.5 hour show. So
what did this experience teach you about listening to your body?
What did this experience teach me about listening to my body? It taught me, feel like I addressed it, to really slow down, and to trust that, you can overcome almost anything, and that, injuries don't define you, what you do doesn't define you. And to really trust the process of slowing down, and that you will get there, and it's not a bad thing to take your time. It's not a setback. It actually is a huge gift in some ways. I think actually, you know what? As I'm speaking, I remember saying this a lot once I actually when I was in the middle of it, and once I overcame it, was how this was such a gift. Because I think another part of this injury that I was exploring was one day when I was driving back, because I was commuting on my days off from essentially Toronto to Niagara. And I remember one day driving and going, Achilles heel, okay, what does that mean? Like, what's the deeper meaning of my Achilles heel? Because every part of your body represents something. And so, people talk about your weaknesses, your Achilles heels as your weakness or a vulnerable point, right? So I asked myself the question, and man, was the answer clear. It was as clear as day when I asked that. So that's why I actually sourced out a specific therapist, because I was like, I think that this injury is bringing up something, that it's not only about my physical body, but there's something in my system and in my thought process and how I speak to myself that is part of this. And sure enough, when I started addressing this specific thing, my Achilles heel, it started to feel like it was getting stronger and healing more quickly. So that, again, that link between the body and mind, and that there's always a conversation. It's not if we really listen and go beyond just the injury for what it is, but, what is that injury saying? What else is it telling us? So that was a really fascinating thing, and it's something that I'm still working through, and didn't realize that this was years of layers of how I conducted myself in this certain situation, or Achilles heel, this weakness.
You are beginning training in intimacy coordination for film, TV, and theater. What drew you to this work?
Hmm. Well, to be honest, a friend of mine for a few years, she was telling me to look into this and that I would be really good because of all this body work that I do. She was saying, I think you'd be a really great intimacy coordinator because of the embodied work you do, and also you're an actor, so really understanding both sides, and kind of speaking actor. And I resisted it for a long time because I'm still not ready to give up performing and being an actor. So again, I hummed and hawed, and then during as I was going through this process in the rehearsal for White Christmas, I had a moment where I was meditating and just asking the questions a lot of artists do when they hit bumps in the road. What am I doing with my life? What's next? Like, how do I, navigate this once this part is over? Or navigate life, or what's the next phase of life? Do I keep going? Do I look for something different? And intimacy coordinating popped in my head, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. And I got off the call. I got out of my meditation, and then I went to go do some emailing. And sure enough, there was an email from this friend saying, I'm not sure if you saw this, but the application for PIPS, which is Principal Intimacy Professionals, their training of phase 1, the application was due in about a week and a half. And then my partner that same day sent me a video of an interview with an actor talking about the intimacy coordinator that they had on set and the importance of that role. And I was like, this is interesting. I just literally got 2 signs. So I was like, you know what, I'm just going to apply and see what happens. And I started the training about 2 weeks ago. I got into the program, and it is intense. But I wasn't 100% sure, if this was something I wanted to explore. And then once I kind of went on that path to commit to the application and to the program, my brain has expanded, and I'm like, this is just another tool, another title I can carry, and that can infuse my work as an embodied movement coach and as a performer.
So then how does this training connect to embodiment, trust, and the nervous system awareness?
Well, a big part of the job is advocating for actors and being essentially a go-between between actors and production. So you want to make sure that the actors feel safe in scenes that require nudity or simulated sex scenes or intimate scenes, while still supporting and collaborating with the director's vision, or with the director on their vision. So the embodied movement work that I do, because it's so nervous system based and about, finding system and learning about your boundaries, that's ultimately one of the biggest parts of this work, is helping the actors talk about and learn about either their own or each other's boundaries and consent, And because, it's a very vulnerable thing to do, especially as a performer, being intimate with someone who's maybe not your partner, or nude in front of, a certain amount of people, because there are closed set protocols. So not everybody who's on the production can be there when those scenes are happening, but there are still people that need to be there. So it can be quite vulnerable. And so how can you help the actor feel grounded, safe, and present in the work while still having to do all these vulnerable acts? And I think the work that I do can really help with that, because just the practice of what I explained, the practice of grounding and breathing, if they feel like super nervous, at any point, or maybe starting to panic, like, oh my God, I can help with regulating the nervous system and being there as a support system. And again, relaying any concerns or issues they have to the production team.
How do you see this work fitting into everything else that you do?
The intimacy work? Ooh, I think one of the biggest things is that it will allow me to maybe advocate for myself if I don't have that support system as an artist or as a performer. I think it's teaching me a lot of the nuances of these kind of scenes. Also learning about my rights within the union, and consent laws. I just think it just expands, when you expand your knowledge of things like that, it just allows you to do your work with a little more ease.
I had a friend work on a sci-fi drama with nudity. After a sex scene aired, she got harmful feedback and clips ended up on porn sites. Another friend of mine did a brief shower scene in an acting role, which in the scene you might have seen her nipple for half a second. Screenshots of that appeared on porn adult websites, which was shared online, causing confusion in her family, thinking that she was a porn star, an adult film star. What do these situations say about how intimacy is handled in mainstream media? How could performers get better guidance, support with these and boundaries? How do you think intimacy coordination can change how these stories are told and how performers are protected? 3 questions in one here, but ultimately, I'm saying this because these are 2 friends of mine, and they're not adult porn stars. Not that there's anything wrong with that particular industry, but these were 2 actresses that were doing mainstream TV production, and they did these type of scenes, and then they get put on sites which is out of their control, and they get labeled something they weren't, and family judged them in a way that they shouldn't have been judged. Long question, I know.
Yeah.
But
Did you have anything else? No, I was gonna say, um, the footage or the film or TV show, whatever it was it the production that posted it on these sites?
no, no, no,
No.
no. No,
Yeah.
these are just ultimately TV
Oh,
shows that are TV shows for how they are. And then I think that could happen with anything, a movie on television, any movie that happens to have a scene can be put on these type of sites and put in a funnel with maybe other clips that are those type of clips. And I think
yeah.
look at it with the same lens.
Well, when it's out of context, it's can be very scary in that way. This is a question that I might ask the people who are teaching, the instructors of the program, because that's interesting. From what, like, my knowledge and maybe how I would respond to that, is, when there is something out there, if it's on Netflix, it's online, in the show or in the film, it's very hard to control what other people are going to do with it. Now, technically, if someone has stolen that footage, did not ask the production for permission to use it and has put it on their site and is making money off of it, I think that's a violation of someone's privacy and rights, and I think it's illegal. So, what I would say to maybe suggest to your friends who are in this situation is, can they go to the production or contact someone, maybe HR or someone in the production team, and let them know that this has come up, and or can your legal team help out with this, or is this a violation of my privacy, my work, and my rights? I don't know, and it's interesting because, as I was saying, I think that this type of work is part of what can help in these situations as an actor. Because if I saw that, I might go, oh, wait a minute, I know that that's not okay, because that's stolen property. Like, they had stolen that footage and are taking it out of context and making it something else on a pornographic site or whatever. I don't think that's allowed. So I would say, ask them to, or suggest that they ask someone in the production, or if they have an agent, can their agent advocate for them as well?
And by the way, I'm assuming you're having those conversations. I guess the broader question is more just what could they do, or in the sense of, even these clips might be inevitable. That's just how the internet is sometimes. It is what it is. And I'm more even, maybe I should have framed it this. I'm even asking you, as someone that's an actress, an actor, how would you feel in that situation? What would you do, knowing that you're not necessarily an adult film
Mhm.
star,
I
and
would
you're
be mortified.
and if these clips ended up on there, even though you know what you were doing, you're proud of your work, everyone on that set knew what that production was, but maybe a family member, a second cousin or something, just the chain of they come across this clip, or someone passes the clip to them, and then that, the broken telephone,
Totally. And
and
they
then
can
it's
say to
like,
those
oh,
people,
I saw your so and so on this site, and you're like, yeah, well, she didn't put it there,
yeah,
so.
and that it's completely out of context. Like, here's the link to the film that it's from, or here's the TV show that it's from. Maybe watch that, because when it's taken out of context, that's how it looks, or it may not give the right representation of what the work was, and what that work that I did. And then the other thing to that is how an intimacy coordinator could play a big part in this process is, you know, what I'm learning is, in every scene that requires nudity, simulated sex, or intimacy of any kind, that they flag these scenes, and then talk to the actors about, okay, this is a scene, this is the director's vision, what are you comfortable with? What will you show? What will you not show? If you show it, how long do you want to show your nipples? Is it 10 seconds of the scene, or is it a flash? Those are so specific and important, and those go into a rider, and that rider needs to be received 48 hours before that scene is filmed, because, and this is what I just learned today in one of the videos I was watching for the training, is that when you give the actor enough time to go, do I want to do this? Wait a minute. If you give it to them in the moment, like, oh, you're going to do this, and we didn't specify what that looks like and the terms around that, there could be many terms around being topless. You know, if we didn't specify, then a director, producer can just, it's a free-for-all. And the actor or actress might feel pressured in the moment, might feel good in the moment, be like, yeah, let's go, this is great, I'm feeling good. But then because they didn't have time to think about it, after it's happened, they go, shit, oh, excuse me, sorry, like, cut that out. I didn't really want to do that. Like, that's not really how I wanted that to go. So when there's a rider involved that stipulates all those terms, and the actor then can read it and even go through it maybe with their agent, you know, they can take a couple days, the 2 days, to kind of sit with this. How does that feel in my nervous system? And that's a big part of the work too, the integration of the embodied movement work, and, you know, making decisions for yourself is, can I take a second, drop into what is being asked? How does my body respond? Not up here, but how is my body responding? Because your body's going to say, it's going to either go, something doesn't quite feel right about doing that, or, you know what, yeah, I'm good with these terms, you know. So having that in place gives the actor that choice, and that they don't feel pressure to do something they're not comfortable with doing, you know. And then when it gets filmed, it gets out there, and then again, wherever it ends up, because people are just people hacking all over the place and stealing things, that's kind of out of our control. But there are steps we can take to address it, for sure. But in terms of the work an intimacy coordinator can do is help with navigating how much an actor wants to do with either nudity or any of those intimate scenes. Because again, you could be there and be like 10 seconds, 15 seconds, a whole minute, or again, just a flash, right? Whatever the performer's comfortable with.
For someone dealing with ongoing pain or recurring injuries, what is one gentle place to start?
Specifically with chronic pain, I think the most gentle place to start is giving yourself time to be with your nervous system. You know, it's not about going to stretch your body or force it to move if it's in a lot of pain. It's, can I take a moment to acknowledge it and regulate the system through some breath work? Because when we can just breathe and start to settle, then we can invite that movement that might not feel like a trigger for the pain to kick in. But yeah, chronic pain is a big one, and it's what I love to work with, because we don't need to live with it, even though sometimes people will identify themselves with it. That's a big piece to get around, that this does not define you. Your pain does not define you. You're not your chronic issue. And so it's really getting out of that mindset, because when you do, you will open up a world of freedom and healing.
How can people bring more ease into everyday movement, not just exercise?
Um, I think same. Like it's funny because the answer is the same. It's very simple. Can I take moments to stop, check in, be present with how I'm breathing, how I'm connected to the ground, and just taking a pause, slow down. Because we live in a society that's so fast and just in constant motion. I'm not saying that's bad, like that's, I think a lot of people thrive in that. Um, but for it again to be sustainable, we need to slow down and maybe take a couple breaths. Maybe I roll the shoulders. I can check in with where my body is holding and feeling tense, and just see if you can bring a little breath and movement. I think that is super helpful on a daily basis, and as you go through your day.
That was sort of the next question I was going to ask. We can kind of clip this specifically. Is there a simple grounding or awareness practice listeners could try today?
Hmm. Okay. Oh man, there's so many. Do you want to give me a specific scenario that they could use it in, or you mean just generally, you know,
This is going to be the clip that makes us billions and billions of followers and millions of dollars. So this is for YouTube and Spotify and all the above. So give me your best. This is the clickbait clip.
okay, so repeat the question so my brain can process.
No pressure. Um, is there a simple grounding or awareness practice listeners could try at this very moment today when they watch this clip?
100%. Um, Even taking a moment just to stand and again noticing your feet on the ground. And as you do that, do you notice one side is taking more pressure than the other? And just becoming aware of, oh, am I leaning? Am I dropping my shoulders? So, really taking yourself through a body scan. And then you don't want to try to fix anything or force like a perfect posture. But I personally, and I will do this on the subway, I will do this in line at a grocery store, because I think other people might look at it and go, oh, that actually feels really good. I think I need to move my body. And I've seen people start to move when I do it. And I'll stand up and just show you. So I can do that whole assessment with my feet, and I can even play with distributing the weight a little bit, and then find my feet again. Has anything changed in how they're grounding? Are they a little more aligned or equal? And then I literally will roll down and kind of shake out my arms and my head and roll back up, maybe do a couple of shoulder rolls. And I find that this just, when I get connected to my spine, it's the core. It's the core of your system, your nervous system. And when I can, again, bring some movement into the spine, it can really help with finding more space in the body, becoming more aware of your body. Yeah, I hope that's helpful for people. I hope, but there's so many things we can do.
On your website, you offer free resources for people exploring mindful movement and grounding. Can you tell us what's available and how listeners can use it to bring more ease into their day. And before you answer that, actually, I should have started this by saying I spent like an hour on your website the past few days researching, preparing. You have an amazing website, and I
Thank you.
just think it's so refreshing that someone like yourself that offers a lot of services that do have a fee to it, that you are offering such help free of charge. I just
Hmm.
think that's
Aw,
amazing.
thanks,
I
Trevor.
want to say that that's amazing, and I don't want that to get unnoticed here. That's amazing, and I hope
You.
you. I'm thanking everyone. I'm thanking you on behalf of those that haven't thanked you. That I think it's great that your website has these free resources. So talk to me
Yeah.
about it.
Well, one of the reasons, I mean, the main reason for the free resources is that I want this work to be accessible to people. And I just feel like, oh, we can walk around with less like aggravated people, with short fuses, and we can be a little more compassionate, empathetic towards each other. So, having these resources that are accessible to people who may not be able to afford sessions with me, I mean, it makes me feel good that I can help people, and the amount of DMs I've received, and people opening up to me, like they won't comment on a video or anything. They actually send me a private message and start opening up to me about, what is ailing them or what they're going through, and these are some very personal issues or personal, I don't want to say issues, events or things that they're going through. They don't want to put it publicly, but that, to know that the free things are helping people, because it's really hard to know sometimes when you're doing this work and you're putting all this stuff out on social media and you might not get the 1,000 likes and comments. It can be a bit discouraging in the sense that, is anyone even paying attention or doing this or trying it? But I think just trying to be as consistent as possible, and that's my way of giving back. Like that's my way of donating to a charity. That's my way of, donating my time to a soup kitchen or or a shelter or whatever it may be. Like that's how I give back, and it's quite moving and touching when people send me those messages, and yeah, there's resources on YouTube, on TikTok now. I try to do every day. Sometimes I can't do it every day because things get crazy, but I really try to do a daily ease practice or a daily ease reminder to invite people to stop scrolling and drop in and do this quick breathing, this 2-minute breath practice to kind of everything we talked about, to regroup, reground, get present, or shed off the day, or whatever it is you're holding on to. Yeah, and then yeah, there's a couple things that are of monetary value too. And one of the big ones, I don't know if you're going to ask me about it. Maybe I should leave you about the ease program.
Yeah,
And
we're gonna get into that, but before we get there, and we'll mention all your social media, your website at the end of the interview. We'll put it in the description with the interview. But the one thing I will say about following you on TikTok, because I'm a loyal follower of your TikTok account, your videos always come up at the right moment of my day when I'm scrolling, not working, and I'm just distracted and I'm looking through something and I'm looking for some sort of pick me up or just some sort of break. your clip comes up at the right time. So I'm talking to you, the internet. Make sure you give her a follow on TikTok, and we'll put all of her socials at the end, everything. I'm telling you, it'll come at the right time for your in the algorithm. It just finds you.
Oh, I love that.
Anyways, but yeah. So you offer private sessions and your ease program. Can you describe these services and who might benefit most from them?
So the ease program is essentially for, I say it's the work I wish more people knew existed. And it is for, it's really for everybody. And I say everybody and every body, again, I've worked with all kinds of bodies. And it's for people who might be extremely overwhelmed, again, as I mentioned before, disconnected to their bodies and need to feel their bodies even more. Like they have lost touch with their body connection. People who are highly stressed and carrying a lot of tension that are just locked up. But again, even day-to-day stresses that are minimal, it's great, because if the stresses are small and you haven't accumulated, years of tension due to these stressors, that's great. It's also a preventative practice too. So it can prevent us from spiraling too much. We are human. We are gonna hit challenging times and times of where we're dealing with adversity and whatnot. So again, it's not about everything's going to be perfect if I do this, No, it's again developing those tools, and the ease program helps you in supporting that development. This program specifically is a 6-week program, and I don't want to say it's an intensive, but it might seem a lot for people to commit to. But what I want to say is you can and will find the time if this is something you want to do. I've worked with people who are very high achievers and busy, and they're like, how am I going to fit 3 hours in a week? But it's amazing how you can find an hour and 15 minutes every day. Not every day, 3 times a week. There are 2 private movement sessions and 1 mindfulness meditation session with this woman named Esther. So she's sort of the mindfulness meditation coach, and I do the embodied movement portion. And we can do this in person or online. The meditation mindfulness portion is usually always online because she's in Hungary, she's in Budapest. But if someone is local, Mississauga, Etobicoke, Toronto, we can do in person. And then, there's the 6 weeks of that, and there's 1 week of the 6 weeks that's an integration week. So we kind of leave you on your own to see if you can sustain that practice, because ultimately what we're endeavoring to do for you and how we support you in this journey is to build the consistency for that would lead to the sustainable shifts and transformations in your body, in your system, how you go about life. That's why it's 3 sessions a week. So it's, I think, 15 sessions total. So it's a big program, but it's quite impactful.
So we're getting down to the final couple questions of this interview, and I thank you so much for your time tonight. Closing reflection. Looking back, how have these challenges shaped you as a teacher and as a guide?
I think that they have deepened my level of empathy and compassion, and really understanding that every situation is different, and not everybody's going to respond to the same guidance or the same practices. So it really inspires me and invites me to improvise is not the word, but trust my instincts. As I work with people, I will come in with a plan, but a lot of times the cues come from the person's nervous system and their body, and what it's asking of me or them. So it really has allowed me to trust the process and not control. And, I think early on in my teachings, I think I wanted everyone to do it the way I was doing. I'm like, do it this way because it's right and it's going to be good for you, and as I continue to explore and work with different bodies and different nervous systems, I've learned that you have to be able to adjust on the spot and really listen to the individual, because they're going to tell you what they need, and you're there to hold space and give them space to hold that space for themselves too, essentially, and let them have the time and space to explore their own systems, because again, life is so busy that we just override what we actually need. Like, we don't listen. So it's really, really inspired me or invited me to relinquish control of what I think is good for someone else, and also for myself, and situations. Not to feel like I need to control, and just allow it to unfold, and it'll be messy, and that's okay.
What does living with ease mean to you now?
Living with ease, what it means to me now, I think a lot of what I've already talked about. I think that it's really trusting the guidance, the universe, trusting your process, and continuing to foster your personal growth journey. Like, I think it's so important that we don't stop learning about ourselves. We need to keep learning as long as we're a living, breathing human. I think living with ease is constant learning, constant growth, because all of that will help us navigate, again, challenging situations. And we can also find the joy and the liveliness of little, what seems meaningless things in life. Like, we can find the meaningfulness of it and the joy. And I think another big part of living with ease is daily gratitude practices. And the more we can express our gratitude for what we have already, just allows us to open up for more abundance and growth. Just it invites room for more growth.
If listeners remember one thing from this conversation, what do you hope it is?
Breathe, slow down, breathe, and just give yourself grace and patience. being patient is not a bad thing. It's not a cop out. If we can be patient and meet ourselves where we're at, we can go so much further than we expect or anticipate.
Now, this is a bonus question. You're in an elevator. You can choose how big the building is, whether it be a six-floor building, 24 building, or going to the CN Tower. But you're in an elevator and someone does not know who you are, doesn't know what you offer in services, doesn't know about your website. Sell yourself in that elevator spiel. What you do.
You're asking me to do an elevator pitch? I love it.
That's why I said you can choose how long the elevator ride is. I didn't say it's a
yes, you're right.
30-second elevator, right?
So explain to them, pitch.
Like you're introducing yourself in the elevator and who you are, whether you want to talk about you, the acting world, it's your choice. You're in the elevator. I'm in the elevator. I walk into the elevator and you're telling me about what you do, who you are.
Yeah. Well, I am a performing artist. I am a performing artist in film, TV, and theater, and a lot of my work has been in theater, and I'm also a body worker. I like working with bodies that have come across challenges and working with people specifically with chronic pain to help them live a more easeful, functional life where they don't feel like they're a victim to their pain and their ailments, and also a victim to their negative thoughts. I really, even though I'm not a therapist, I'm a great listener. I really love hearing about people's individual stories and how they got to where they are today and what led them here to this elevator. How this meeting be.
Thank you, Julia, for your time tonight, and everything. Thank you for all you do. Just you as a person, I've gotten to know you the past few weeks, months, and prepping for this interview. Your website is outstanding, everything you offer. And again, shout out to Heather again for connecting us. But yeah, I will be putting all your socials and website in the summary. But if you want to get the last word, Julia, give us your website, your social media, all your fun stuff, everything. How can we reach you and give you all our money to hire you, because you're just
amazing. Well, first I want to say thank you, Trevor, for reaching out and being so thorough. And I love the questions you asked. They were very like thought provoking. They made me think a little more deeply. So thank you for that. And where people can find me on my website is www.livewithEase.ca. You can find me on Instagram _livewithEase_ or Julia Juhas is my artist's handle. And then TikTok is, I don't actually even know my TikTok handle off by heart, but if you look for Live With Ease, I think it's Live With Ease, but I don't know what other characters are in there. I'm very new to TikTok. And I also have Julia Juhas on TikTok, and then on YouTube, Live With Ease, also Julia Juhas, and then on Facebook, same, Live With Ease, Julia Juhas.
So it's not Yuhan and it's not Yuha.
No.
Okay.
Yuhan. Like
Yeah.
that song, Juhas means, I don't even know what that means, but that's how I like to, that's my elevator pitch on my last name.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time today. Thank you everyone for watching. Again, thank you so much for everything. Thank you.
Thank you, Trevor.